Good afternoon, Dr. Wright. How are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. I didn't know I was getting all this time. This is exciting. First of all, we're going to pass out just to the City Council so you can see the work that we've been doing. And believe it or not, I'm going to read a statement because I thought I only had this time. I wanted to make sure I got it in, and then I'll talk. Okay, the City Council should adopt or vote in favor of the City Planning Staff Report, which recommends denial of the amendments to the master plan proposed by the Port of New Orleans. Approving the Port's plan would make new city policies on equity and sustainability an empty promise. These amendments by the Port would allow industrial plants on undeveloped lands that protect our city from storm surge. Millions of dollars are being invested in protecting and preserving lands that are our first line of defense against hurricane storm surge in New Orleans and southeast Louisiana. Turning these lands over to industrial development, as requested by the Port, would heighten the vulnerability of New Orleanians to hurricanes. The social science of climate change recognizes that people of color in poor communities are located in areas that are most likely to be affected by the disruption of climate change, or at least likely to recover from extreme weather. We see this here in New Orleans and New Orleans East. Our challenge is to find solutions, not look for ways to add to the problem. The Council should recognize that the Port's request comes at a time when there are two other plans by Entergy and a Council motion that would add more industrial development in New Orleans East. The Council should consider the aggregate impacts of all three plans. Each proposed would single New Orleans East for particularly hazardous land use that no other neighborhood would have to endure. The Council motion, which seeks change of a citywide law to allow industrial use of business park areas, would only apply to New Orleans East. The Port and Entergy target areas in New Orleans East for industrial use. Each proposal seeks industrial land use either near residential neighborhoods and schools or on lands that provide storm surge protection. Each proposal would continue the unjust pattern of disproportionately burdening predominantly African American and Vietnamese American neighborhoods with toxic pollution, flood risk, and other environmental hazards. Each proposal would result in the loss of sustainable growth opportunities for New Orleans East. The harmful impacts of each proposal would be magnified when considered cumulatively. Before you vote on this Port plan, I urge the Council to meet us in New Orleans East for a fact-finding visit on what current industrial uses have done to our neighborhoods. I'm here representing the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, of which I'm the executive director, but also as a resident of New Orleans East. We moved to New Orleans East when I was 14 years old. I made 70 years old on October 1st, so it's been a very long time that I've been in the East.
I don't buy that.
I don't either. I don't believe it.
Well, thank you, but it's true. And I engage every year. I'm happy to be here.
That's right.
But I would just like to say that we're at a time when the decisions that we make now will affect us. I forgot my glasses, so I can't even see you all with these on. Where the decisions that we make now will affect us for the future. And we're talking about, in layman's terms, floating this boat, finding a better direction for the city of New Orleans. But what I keep seeing is that we're continuing old practices where some people benefit and others don't, and those people inevitably look like me. I'm really so tired of the shenanigans with all of the, ways to justify doing something that some people want done, and so we come up with these very deep and intricate kinds of explanations for doing something that we all should know. Common sense tells us in New Orleans, where we live, because of climate change, severe weather and storms, that New Orleans East is not a place where we should be putting these dangerous and polluting facilities. In New Orleans East, we've been in the dark for years. In other words, we lived there, but we didn't know that we were living with a lot of contamination. We didn't. I grew up in New Orleans East with smoke and fires, and people say, oh, the dump is burning. You know, we didn't know what was affecting us, but we know now. We know a lot of science. If you want to believe the science, then the science really points to the fact that we should not be doing these things. And I feel personally assaulted. You know, when my parents bought property in New Orleans East on Rosemont Place, the promise was, and it was just a second black housing development built in the city. The first was Pontchartrain Park, the second was Rosemont Place, and the third was Academy Park. So I grew up during segregation, and the promise was that this was going to be a beautiful place to live when my parents bought that house. Brand new street. We have not seen that dream come true. We weren't told all the facts. We never would have moved in a place where we would be bombarded with smoke all the time from dumps burning, you know, not knowing that we were breathing in toxins. So we're at a point where we know, we think we have people who represent our interests, and we'd like to see something different. Follow the recommendations that were made and deny these permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wright.